Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2, Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low Magazine? Because 4Low Magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Trent McGee. Many of you probably know Trent from the early days in the magazines at Four Wheeler. That's about the time I met Trent, and then with the host is Superlift TV. But he's had many badges. He's had many business cards. And like everybody in our industry, nobody ever really disappears. They just change business cards. So Trent, I'd like to thank you for coming on board today and talking about your history in off-road.
Well, thank you, Rich. I really appreciate it. It's kind of an honor to even be asked to be on your podcast. So thank you very much.
Well, it's my honor to have you with us. So, I thank you so much. So let's just jump right in. I understand that you grew up in Arizona and were born and raised there?
Not really born there. Technically, I was born in Northern California, in Los Gatos, San Jose area, but my parents moved to a little town outside of Phoenix, which is not so little anymore, called Fountain Hills, when I was 3. So I really kind of consider myself an Arizona native, even though I'm technically not born here. I was definitely raised here and stuff, so it's definitely home.
Yeah, I was born a Bay Area boy as well, farther up the peninsula. But I always say I'm from Placerville. And I didn't actually move there until after college.
Fair enough.
So let's talk about that Los Gatos time at 3 years old. I know I don't have any 3-year-old memories, except for what people have told me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I maybe have some vague recollections of the house that we lived in, but it's hard to say whether that was an actual recollection or, my mom or dad, telling a story or something like that. So no, I really, 3 years old's pretty small. So I don't really remember much time there. I've been back there many times. We've still have some extended family up there and it's a neat area, but I think I was much better served, moving here and bouncing around the desert and stuff here.
Absolutely, because you got a much earlier start than me probably. I had to wait until it was 1981 till I finally got on the Rubicon and did real off-roading. So,
cool.
I wasted a lot of time there where I could have been doing stuff. I did a lot of backpacking and stuff, but not the same. So anyway, talk about Fountain Hills and growing up there. How long were you there, and what precipitated the move with your parents to there from Los Gatos?
Well, my dad actually worked for the IRS, believe it or not. My dad is a certified public accountant. And I believe what precipitated the move was him leaving the IRS and getting a job at one of the big accounting firms, of which they had an office here in town. And I think even then Dad was maybe not so enthused about raising a family in Northern California, where it's very expensive and lots of maybe questionable influences and stuff like that. So, I guess really my early days in Fountain Hills, that really developed my love for the desert. It being a real small community, I think there were 2 classes per grade in my school that I was in. So it was about 60 kids and stuff. So it was really cool being able to, I would walk to the bus stop and would run around in the desert with a buddy of mine, building forts and stuff like that, and chasing rattlesnakes and rabbits and stuff like that. So I think that's really where, because at the time it was a more rural sort of a place, and but a cool place and with lots of neat stuff to explore. So, but I think that's probably where at least that established my love for the outdoors.
Well, that makes total sense. Yeah, it's probably why I don't like the big cities, because I grew up in those.
Me either. Although I do live in one, but you also have to make a living. So
right, that's true. But aren't you farther out, or are you in the metro area?
I'm definitely in the metro area.
Okay.
I'm kind of way up on the northwest side of town.
Okay.
And so I'm not like in the central corridor, downtown adjacent or anything like that. I'm definitely up in the suburbs. So, but what's cool is I'm only about 20 minutes from Table Mesa, which is a well-known area, off-road area here in Phoenix, and somewhat known elsewhere. But that's only about 20 minutes from the house. And then the Boulders, which is another off-road area that's between Phoenix and Wickenburg. I'm only about 20 or 30 minutes from there, and it takes about 5 hours to get up the back way to Crown King from here and stuff. So definitely like being on the outskirts. That's no shortage of places to go.
Right, and that makes total sense. I know that area well. I spent a lot of time there. So let's talk about those early years running around in the desert, chasing rattlesnakes and rabbits and all that kind of stuff. Were you a bicycle guy, or did you get a motorcycle early?
My mom was a rather protective lady, and so I really wasn't allowed to have a motorcycle, which is always kind of bummed me out in some ways. So I was definitely a BMX bike guy. Early on there was a house that had actually burned about halfway between where I lived and where my buddy Noah Harper lived, and we would ride our bikes to the burned down house and hide the bikes in the bushes, and then just run down into these washes and explore these washes and stuff. And that was really, really cool. That's everybody thinks that the desert is just kitty litter and everything just stings, sticks, or bites, and that's true. It's a very inhospitable place, but there's also a lot of cool aspects to it as well. Being able to find water, and there was a spring nearby that ran pretty much year round, which is kind of unusual and stuff. So yeah, that was how I spent a lot of my time when I wasn't in school.
So let's talk about school. Were you athletic, scholastic, or something else?
Definitely scholastic. I really am not a terribly coordinated person, and or very quick or agile, and so I played baseball and stuff like that. But it was definitely kind of a secondary thing. I was kind of a brainy kid. I was usually in AP classes and stuff, and then early, when I was probably from the time I was about, I'm going to say 7 to maybe 13, I was very involved in theater, and I was in something like 30 plays by the time I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And did the whole agent thing for a while, where we auditioned for movies and commercials and stuff like that. I did one national commercial for a toy that was an absolute flop, and was an extra in a couple of movies and stuff, but nothing ever really happened on that front. But it was a good time, and it really did kind of, all that on stage or on camera experience really came in handy much later. So it was cool. And then when I got to high school, I kind of switched to the other side of the stage, backstage, and got really into tech theater. So lighting and sound and set building and stuff like that. And I think that really kind of appealed to the, I guess, what was forming as the kind of the gearhead side of me, building things and doing stuff like that. So really enjoyed that and learned a whole bunch doing that as well.
Okay. And then after, well, let's see, in high school, you would have gotten your, like everybody else typically, except kids nowadays, get your driver's license. So were you able to drive in the desert before your driver's license, or, what was your first car type thing?
No, I'll talk about the first car in a minute. No, my dad wasn't really a gearhead per se. He did have a Jeep, 71 CJ5 that was an absolute steaming pile. But we did quite a bit of camping and four-wheeling in that when I was younger. But actually my first car, it's kind of embarrassing, but my first car was a 79 Volkswagen Rabbit diesel, which I guess my grandpa gave it to me and he had kind of fixed it up but I guess, and now in hindsight, it was actually pretty smart because the thing didn't go fast enough to get you in trouble. It didn't have enough room in it to haul a bunch of people in, and it was a stick shift. So, well, I guess texting wasn't an issue then, but another buddy of mine bought his son, who I think is going to be driving age in maybe another 2 or 3 years. Bought him a little Toyota pickup, and half of the reason he did it is because he can't fit any people in it hardly. It's a stick shift, so he's not going to be texting, that kind of stuff. So I think the same sort of mentality went in to the Rabbit, but that lasted about a year, and then I bought a 73 CJ5, and that was my first four-wheel drive vehicle.
Nice. And was it bone stock, or did you get something with all the Smitty built stuff on it?
No. It was terrible. It was from Nebraska, and being a desert guy, I had no idea what rust was, and that thing was absolute termites holding hands. But I had to have it, and it was an absolute steaming pile. I think I spent as much time working on it as I did driving it, but it was cool. It was a Jeep. I got to run around with the top off. Girls seemed to like riding in it, which was kind of a motivating factor as well. So, but that thing was the one that really kind of got me really interested in off-roading in general. And then when I finished high school, I bought a '88 Toyota pickup, and which was four-wheel drive. And my dad was just absolutely livid with me at the time because he said, you don't need a four-wheel drive. That's just ridiculous. There's so much more money and so much more maintenance, and I didn't listen to him.
and then you spent most of your life in the off-road industry. So
I did. Well, so that it kind of parlayed into, it's funny because he and I had a rather contentious relationship in high school and college. And it wasn't really until I got my job at the magazines that that kind of turned around. And, and I remember telling him, see, Dad, you see that Toyota pickup really did work out, didn't it?
Oh, and parents love to hear that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So how long, okay, you had the Toyota pickup truck. Was that still in high school, or was that after high school?
That was right after high school. So the Jeep kind of was absolutely on its last legs. And so I didn't really have much, it just really didn't have much left in it. And I certainly didn't have the mechanical knowledge at the time to really do much about it. And like I said, and it was absolutely rotten. So that, I think I eventually got rid of the Jeep. I think I was in college for maybe a year when I got rid of it. But the Toyota I had for a long time. I think I think I bought it in 93. I want to say I sold it in like maybe 2003, 2004 or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did you start writing? Was writing before? I know that you went to school in Louisiana for for literature, I
I
believe.
did. Well, yeah. So I was actually in a series of community colleges here in Phoenix, and I actually was at the U of A for a few semesters, and I was a journalism major at U of A. And at the time, I was probably a sophomore, I want to say, but I needed an internship in order to get my degree, and so being kind of a proactive sort, I guess. I don't. I remember what it was. Of all things, Dateline NBC did this piece on lifted trucks and how dangerous they were, and they managed to go to one of the four-wheel jamborees in Indy, where some idiot rolled his truck in the parking lot and stuff, and it was a really terrible, awful, one-sided. Like there was no fair and balance to this. It was really kind of unfortunately much like the media is today.
That's what I was going to say. You stole it
yeah.
from me. Awesome.
but really they were, as I recall anyway at the time, they were a bit more fair and balanced than they were. And I was so mad at the time. I had been a subscriber to Four Wheel and Off-Road for years. And I was so mad that I wrote a letter to the editor, the one and only letter to the editor that I've ever written to a magazine. And it was David Freiberger was the editor of Four Wheel and Off-Road at the time. And wrote him a letter and just was like, this is ridiculous. Just let him have it, but let Dateline have it, and just how disappointed I was and all this stuff. And then I got to thinking, and this is way before email or whatever. I got to thinking, and so I enclosed another letter with my letter that I had typed up to David as a letter to the editor, and I kind of introduced myself. I told him, my name is Trent McGee. I'm a journalism major at the University of Arizona. I'd be very interested in. I'm a off-road enthusiast, longtime subscriber, and I would just love to know if there was any sort of internship program you guys might have available. And really thought twice about even sending it or whatever, but knew if I didn't do it right then, I wasn't going to do it. And so I put the stamp on it and put it in the mail before I could really think much more about it, and sent it off. And figured that would be the end of it. Never hear anything again. And about, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks later, and I had honestly almost forgotten about it. I want to say 2 or 3 weeks later, I got a letter back. Again, this is snail mail. This is way before emails and stuff. That was on Hot Rod letterhead and Hot Rod magazine letterhead, and it was Cole Quinnell, who was at the time the tech editor of Hot Rod. But they were starting kind of a spin-off magazine of Peterson's Four Wheel and Off-Road called 4x4 Power. And while they were really looking for like permanent staff members, he'd, be interested in talking to me. And so, I was just like over the moon, couldn't believe it. He put his phone number on there. And I think I had maybe even neglected to put my phone number on the letter or whatever. So I called him a couple times, finally managed to catch him in the office. I didn't know at the time that when you're a magazine staffer, you really don't spend much time in the office. Anyway, it just so happened that Cole was from Las Cruces, and this was, I want to say it was right around Christmas time. And he mentioned to me that he was going to be driving home for Christmas and wanted to know if maybe he wanted to meet, And so I met him at like I want to say at Denny's at like 8:30 at night on a Sunday, because he was passing through going home for Christmas, and just had a conversation with him. And one thing led to another, and it turned out that Peterson Publishing, which is a bit surprising, Peterson Publishing didn't have any sort of an internship program whatsoever. You'd think a company that size, that would be a priority, but apparently it wasn't. But so what they ended up doing, I sent him some writing samples. I sent him a couple of sample articles, which I'm sure were terrible. And but he saw enough potential that he basically set me up as a temp. And so I was there in time for to start the first issue of 4x4 Power magazine, and that was in the issue date was October of '96, so that would have been the summer of '96. And at the end of the summer, they offered me a job, and I was like, I thought it was an absolute dream job, so I jumped at the chance.
Excellent. And that's what I keep telling everybody is, you have to reach out and chase what it is you want to do.
For sure.
You can't sit and wait for something to happen to fall in your lap. You just have to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I don't know how different my life would have been if I hadn't had just, sucked it up and mailed off that letter when I did. Because I think if I had let it sit overnight, I probably just would have thrown it away.
Right. And then you'd have been trying to chase that dream down the road a lot longer.
Yeah. Who knows how different my life would have been.
Right.
Had I not sent that letter there as a punk kid in Tucson, Arizona back in the day.
So let's talk about that early time there at 4x4 Power.
So it's funny because I thought I was a pretty on the up and up. I thought I was pretty knowledgeable on the trucks, and because I had been a long time reader of four-wheel and off-road. I was a huge fan of David Freiberger. He was really one of my idols. And he, because what he had done, that was also kind of the birth of when rock crawling really got popular.
Right.
And when really Dave, I guess, hadn't been the editor of Four Wheel and Off Road for very long, and he started pulling all the show trucks out of the book and putting, all these ratty old, Jeeps and rock crawlers and stuff like that. He put Rick Payway's old GPW on the cover and almost got fired for that, by the way. If you ever get an opportunity to talk to David about that it's a good story. But anyway, but the long and the short of it was, when I got there, it was like going to school all over again. Not only was I having to learn the magazine business as a whole and what it takes to actually be a professional writer, I was also woefully, as it turns out, ignorant of the subject matter. Enthusiasm will only get you so far. But when you don't know things like gear splits for dent side Fords and, square body Chevys and stuff like that, you're really kind of behind the eight ball. And so it was, like I said, I learned more, I think, in that first 9 months than anything. And it was a lot of trials and tribulations at the time. I was like I said, I was journalism major and a creative writing minor. And so I really wanted to be funny. And Cole, for whatever reason, he was kind of a by the books, just, stick to the facts sort of a thing. And that it took a while for me to really get behind that and understand what it was that he was needing. Because ultimately, he's my boss, and you gotta perform like he wants you to perform. And, right. But I mean, the guy, I gotta give him credit. I mean, I owe my career to Cole, because he really was able to walk me through it. This snot nosed behind the ear, wet behind the ears kid, and form me into a show enough magazine writer. And but the guy, Cole has an incredible eye for talent. He's still in the industry. He actually owns his own marketing company, much like I do these days. But he was actually the guy that hired Christian Hazel, who's the current editor of Four Wheel and Off Road. He hired John Kappa, who ultimately became the editor of JP and Four Wheeler for a long time, and he's a freelancer still in the industry. Right. Tori Tellum, who is anybody that's read magazines for a long time will recognize that name.
Absolutely.
She still is very active with SEMA. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a few others. I think he hired Vern Simons, who is a very close friend of mine. And so it's quite a roster that he found and all that talent and fostered. So hats off to him.
That's a good testament to Cole. That's for sure. I know that.
Yeah.
One of the things when my wife was in corporate America, when they would have their yearly corporate meetings, they would, if somebody got an award, they would ask the person, whether a sales award or whatever it was, they'd ask who it was that hired you. And most of the people that got the rewards were hired by like 2 or 3 people in the company out of, hundreds. And it always seemed that, those people that did that kind of hiring, they had an eye for it. So it's
and
important.
obviously he does. So, but yeah, I mean, to go from being a college sophomore, junior at U of A to then living in Los Angeles and being down the hallway from David Freiberger and Rick Payway and a bunch of the other guys was quite the culture shock.
I would imagine. So let's talk about your first published article. Do you remember it?
I want to say it was a feature, and it was in the first issue of 4x4 Power. And I think the only reason I'm sure it was terrible, but the only reason I guess I even vaguely remember it is because it was it went through about 20 edits where nope, you need to go back and do this, nope, you need to go back and do that. And it was not one that I had shot, and it to this day it's something I hate doing, where what they at the time what they would do a lot was they would go to a show and they would shoot a whole bunch of features. They'd set up an assembly line because travel was expensive, and so you had to be able to justify going, and so they would just set up an assembly line of features. And so this was a feature that Cole had shot, but you're basically writing a feature off a tech sheet,
right?
And it still is. I mean, to me, it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. I mean, if you never saw the truck and you never met the guy, how are you supposed to speak intelligently about the truck and stuff? So, like I said, to this day, it's something I hate doing. But I think that was that. And then really, early on, I really gravitated more to the technical writing aspect of it, like the how-to type of stuff. And what was neat to me was like basically telling the reader that, I'm learning this just like you are. And, I've never put a suspension lift on a 72 Chevy Blazer before, but we're going to figure it out. And I'm going to show you what hung me up, what worked, what didn't, and all that stuff. And so I really, really, really enjoyed the technical side of writing, maybe even more so than like the event coverage and features and stuff like that.
The true do-it-yourself type article.
That's what I really liked doing. And I even like going to a shop and like shooting a lift kit install or a gear install or whatever. That was better. That was better than writing features. But it's still, I'm sure I was super annoying to people like Jason Bunch and some of the other Maurice Rozo and Off-Road Unlimited. Jason owned, I think still owns Tri-County Gear.
Yes.
And I'm sure I was super annoying because all I would do was ask questions. When I wasn't taking a picture, I was asking a question.
He's such a great guy, though.
He is. I like Jason a bunch.
Yeah.
And Maurice is a great guy too. I think he sold Off-Road Unlimited, but he was the guy. He was like the kind of the go-to shop in Southern California back in the day, where they would. And he did a bunch of movie industry work too, which was kind of neat. Like I know I don't know if you remember Clear and Present Danger, but that movie, the good guy, the Americans targeted this Colombian drug lord's like giant lifted Chevy truck.
Right.
And he had built that truck, and he built 2 of them. He built one that was used in the driving scene, and he built one that they actually blew up. So anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked.
No, that's cool stuff. That's what our listeners want to hear is, the cool things that people know, the cool things that they've done, and who they know, and stories about those people. So
sure, yeah.
How long were you involved with 4x4 Power, and then when did the transition happen for the next phase?
Well, so I was the editor, I was a feature editor of 4x4 Power. I got promoted to tech editor, which is pretty much a name only sort of a thing. And then when Rick Hayway became the editor of JP Magazine, I took his seat at Four Wheel and Off Road as the tech editor. And at that time, Cole had actually become the editor of Four Wheel and Off Road. Dave had moved on. Freiberger had moved on to other stuff. I think he was on Carcraft or Hot Rod or something like that at the time. But anyway, I was there at Four Wheel and Off Road, and that was kind of like my ultimate goal would be to work on Four Wheel and Off Road. Because it was, to me, it's like working for a car guy. It would be like working for Hot Rod, like the ultimate dream job. You work at Carcraft or Chevy High or one of the other titles, but ultimately you want to work at Hot Rod. And for me, I ultimately wanted to work at Four Wheel and Off Road. And so I was able to make that happen. And then, but I had just gotten really tired of Southern California. And unfortunately, the one of the dirty little secrets about the magazine business is they really don't pay you very well. And
really?
And yeah, no kidding. And so, yeah, I think when I started there, I was making $24,200 a year. This is in '96. And I left, I think, 3.5 years later, and I was making $27,200 a year. And, barely keeping up with the bills and stuff, because Southern California was then and remains a very expensive place to live. And,
absolutely.
And so, anyway, I was at SEMA, and I was with Tori. I remember it was right at the end of the day. The show was over, and we were just walking back to the hotel or whatever. And Brett Lovett, who's the owner of Superlift, stopped us, or he happened to still be in the booth or whatever. And he's like, "Hey, and Brett, you'd have to know Brett, but always very positive and matter of fact sort of a thing. But he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for a new marketing guy, and or marketing person. And I just love to hire a magazine guy." And we had a polite conversation, and then walked away. And I remember just Tori and I going, "Yeah, Louisiana, not a chance, no way. Yeah, not even on the radar." And a couple weeks later, I got a phone call from Ed Fortson, and Ed was a staffer at Four Wheel and Off Road, but we did not overlap. He had left, but I knew him, and he was a freelancer, so I dealt with him some that way. But anyway, Ed Fortson calls me at my house. Again, by the way, I did my entire magazine job without a cell phone, and I have no idea to this day how I made that happen, but I did not have a cell phone until I started working for Superlift. But anyway, Ed called me, and he said, "You really ought to think about that." I don't even know how he got my number, to be honest with you. But he's like, "You really ought to think about this. Brett's a great guy, this, that, and the other." And then the other part of it was, when I moved to LA, I thought that I thought I was going to be able to finish my degree and work and stuff. I mean, and it's something I had been doing. I was a full-time employee in Tucson while I was going to school as well. And I just, okay, well, same. I'll just wait for residency. Well, the magazines, I mean, it's a 60 to 80 hour a week grind. It was just all consuming. And I knew there was no way I was going to be able to finish this degree that I was like 2/3 of the way through. And that really, really bugged me. And I ended up flying out, or Brett talked me into flying out there, and he flew me and my girlfriend out there, my living girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. He flew us out there, wined us, dined us, all that stuff. But one of the key things is that he agreed to be flexible with my schedule to where I could finish my degree. So that's why ultimately I finished my degree there at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. But anyway, yeah, that was that. And he threw at the time what I thought was a lot of money. It probably wasn't.
Better than $27,000.
Better than $27,000.
And you were in Louisiana, yeah. So.
And cost of living was cheap. My girlfriend, now wife at the time, we lived in an 800 square foot house in Burbank that had been built in the 20s and really hadn't had much done to it since. And I think we paid $1,200 a month for that place.
Jesus.
And when I moved to Louisiana, we were in a 3-bedroom, I want to say 2,200, 2,300 square foot house on like a half an acre that we were renting for $600 a month.
And you moved in and you went, wow, this place is big, and you could hear echoes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then was like, why are these bugs keep biting me? But yeah. But yeah, so that's ultimately what made me move from leave the magazines and transition to the dark side, quote unquote, to marketing at Superlift Suspension Systems. And it was an interesting time, you know, and I really, we got there. I hated Louisiana, hated it. But I figured as soon as I finished my degree, I'd be out of there, and ended up spending 9 years there.
Wow. Okay. I think that's probably when I met you, is you were at Superlift. I may have been sooner than that.
I don't recall meeting you as a magazine guy, but
Right.
like I said, I left in 99, I think.
So right at the beginning of the rock crawling competition scene.
Yes.
So yeah, so it would have been when you were at Superlift. Okay.
Yeah, I actually covered Bob Hazel's first event in Cruces.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So Bob was at, and speaking of Hazel, he was Oklahoma, or was he was out of Oklahoma, wasn't he?
Well, Bob Hazel was actually in North Carolina at the time, but he had that Sports in the Rough, and I cruised out there to Cruces. I remember Cole being very hot and cold about covering this rock crawling competition or whatever. And I just remember the moment I got there that it was like I was witnessing something special happening. It was super cool, and it was just an incredible experience. Nobody really knew at the time what to expect. Nobody knew what the scoring was going to be like, and and Bob, to his credit, Bob was a lot of things, but to his credit, he came up with the scoring system that I think pretty much everybody continues to use to this day in terms of the rock crawling competitions, or at least the template. You know what I mean?
The basic template, yes.
Yeah, and how how you pull that out of thin air, because that was the thing that I couldn't figure out, is like, how on earth are you going to score rock crawling? I mean, how does that even work? And like I said, many things, but I think he was an innovator in that way.
Absolutely, I agree. The time at Superlift, you were marketing, and you guys came up with doing Superlift TV as part of the marketing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it was kind of the brainchild of Brett, but Brett was always trying to figure out a way to market his company and get somebody else to pay for it. And so, we had kind of an event series that actually Bob was running. So I was involved with Bob for a lot of years after that, but or dealt with him, good and bad. But anyway, he came up with this idea of doing a television show, and one thing led to another. We shot a pilot, and I had done some other interviews or whatever, and I really wasn't interested in being involved with a project per se. But I shot a couple of segments, and he was like, "Oh, you're perfect. That's perfect. This is what we need." And so the master idea was to create this TV show that was called Superlift Off-Road Adventures, and sell a bunch of sponsorships, and therefore, and get for it to at least pay for itself, or not make some money, and have this title sponsorship for the show that you control and don't really have to spend any money on. So it was kind of a brilliant idea. It never really worked out that way. I don't think the show ever really made any money, but it did well enough that we were able to justify continuing. So we did that for 3 years, 3.5 years, and it was 120 or more half-hour shows that we did. So it was a lot. It couldn't have. That doesn't. It's 26 episodes a year. Yeah, I guess that the math kind of works.
Yeah.
But yeah, 120 something shows. So I think it was 3.5 years is what we did it for. So anyway, we didn't have any budget or money for any real talent, so I kind of got the job by default, I guess.
Real talent. But you had the acting background.
Well, so that's where it all kind of came into play, or that's where everything kind of came home to roost, so to speak. I had acquired all this four-wheel drive knowledge. I had this big acting background, where at least you're not camera shy, and you can try and speak intelligently, and stuff. And so, but it was really like, so that's where kind of everything came together, and it really worked out. And it was a special time. It was a ton of work. It was basically a 3-man band. It was myself, Brad Smith, who was the producer. I'm sure you met Brad.
Yes.
And then one, maybe 2 camera guys at the time. And that's it. So it was a lot of work, and we cranked out a lot of product and I think pretty decent product for the kind of budget and stuff that we were working with.
So, yeah, I thought so. What was the most memorable show that you did with Superlift Adventures? What's the one that sticks out? Was it a person? Was it a product? Was it or an event? Something that went sideways or didn't happen? That kind of thing.
I think probably the only thing that really sticks out for me was we built a few project vehicles. One of which was actually the last one was my rock crawling buggy, my blue one that I've had for many, 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 many years, and still have. But anyway, probably the most special one was I had a coworker that had an 85 4Runner, and he had 3 kids. I don't think his wife worked and stuff, so money was very tight. But he was just a nice person. He was just a good guy. He had managed to, I think his brother had bought this 4Runner so that he could put his boat in some lake that he liked to go to that didn't have a loading ramp on it. So he needed a 4-wheel drive, but it was an 85 4Runner. It was an 85 SR5 4Runner, the unicorn, the fuel injected,
right,
front axle, the unicorn, the one everybody wants. And so we hatched this idea to redo this 4Runner for him. And so I managed to get in touch with his brother, so Terry found out that his brother had bought this piece of crap 4Runner, and because it was a piece of crap, and Terry agreed, or Terry was just drooling about it, and his brother agreed to sell it to him for like $800 or something like that. And we hatched this plan, and I got a hold of his brother and basically got the car months earlier than Terry's brother drove it to Wichita, and then I think Superlift's truck driver at the time went up to Wichita and got it and brought it down. And so I spent 3 or 4 months putting together, basically rebuilding this 4Runner without his knowledge at the studio. So I had to keep him away from the studio, because the studio, fortunately, it was in a different building than Superlift was, but it was only about 7 miles away. So I had to keep him out of the studio. On top of that, his and my office shared a wall.
So you're trying to round up parts and do everything.
I'm rounding up parts. I would have to close my door. There were half a dozen close calls, where I said something offhand or somebody, because unfortunately, as quiet as we tried to keep it, kind of word got out and stuff. And I was just super worried, because the whole point was, I was going to rebuild this thing and then present it to him, surprise him with it. And so it came down to, and the whole setup was that he was going to go get the car in Colorado, and in 3 or 4 months. So I only had 3 or 4 months to do it. it was kind of like a quasi overhauling sort of a thing.
Right.
But I lifted it. It had been tapped in the front end, and it needed a grill and a hood and a fender, and so I lifted it. I put the crossover steering on it. I put a low range kit in the transfer case. Went through the axles. I mean, it wasn't a small build. It was a pretty decent build. Put bumpers on it, a roll cage, all that stuff. And then the day that he was going to leave for Colorado, I arranged when he was going to borrow a truck from Superlift to get it. And so his brother flew out, and I made sure that I had the truck at the studio. And he thinks that he's going to be leaving for Colorado. He's texting me about getting this truck so that he can leave or whatever. And I was like, dude, I don't have time. Just come to the studio. So he comes to the studio hot, like he's annoyed because he's trying to leave for Colorado to go get this 4Runner that he wants. And anyway, I brought him into the studio, and he was so annoyed. I mean, and Terry doesn't get mad; he just gets annoyed. But he was so annoyed at the time that he walks in, and we're on camera, we're filming, and he walks in and he's like, "Man, I just need the keys to the truck." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, right over." He didn't even see the 4Runner. Like he didn't even notice it, recognize it, or whatever. And so I grabbed the keys out of a drawer, and I was like, "Hey Terry, you want to check out this 4Runner?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's cool. Hey, man, I gotta go." And I was like, "Well, you might want to stick around because that's your 4Runner." And it was just like, it was one of those, overhauling sort of reveals and everything. But that was probably the most memorable thing I did on the show. Sorry, that was a very long-winded story.
No, it's great.
But that was probably the coolest thing I did.
That's awesome. I love when something like that can be done for somebody so deserving. That's cool.
Yeah.
So then, after Superlift, you started your own gig. Is that correct?
Not really. So from there, what happened was that the TV show kind of came and went. I was the director of marketing for Superlift the entire time. So in addition to all the magazine, or excuse me, all the TV shows, all the TV show stuff, I was also, being a marketing guy. But anyway, we just got tired of, my wife and I just kind of got tired of Louisiana and just wanted to go home. Her whole family is from here. She is a very large, very close-knit family. Her whole family is here in the greater Phoenix area. Most of my family is in the greater Phoenix area. And we just wanted to go home. And so I started kind of putting feelers out. After the TV show had gone away, I started putting feelers out about and I guess I should say the TV show, what ultimately killed the TV show is the network that we were on went bankrupt. So, which is kind of strange.
Was that outdoor?
No, that was Men's Outdoors and Recreation. We started on the Outdoor channel, but they just kept hiking the rates up, and so we were on Men's Outdoors and Recreation, and that one went belly up. And so anyway, and it was just a time I was kind of tired of it. Everybody was kind of tired of it. So that worked. But anyway, so I had started putting out feelers for job opportunities back in Phoenix, and I was on actually a magazine thing. Now that I think about it, Jared Jones, who was a longtime staffer on 4Wheel and Off-Road and was the editor of Off-Road, did these really, really cool suspension tests. He only did 2 of them because they were just so involved. But basically what he would do is invite manufacturers to come out and do this basically unbiased suspension test. He did one with Chevy trucks, and then he did one with the brand new JK at the time. And so he spec'd out basically, he invited the different manufacturers out, and they all had to be spec'd out a certain way. And we came out and did this test. And so I was kind of between gigs, and so I got cherry picked to drag a JK across the country actually it was in Arizona, to do this suspension test for Superlift. And there I met the CEO of Daystar, and who Daystar is a Phoenix-based company, And one thing led to another, and I became the director of marketing for Daystar Products. And that happened for about 3 years. And then once that finished or whatever is when I kind of put out my own shingle, so to speak. And that was about 10 years ago.
Okay. And now you represent a number of different companies, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So I do a lot of different things. I kind of got back into freelancing. What I kind of do these days is I specialize in taking small businesses to the next level. And we're talking like real small, or I guess small to small medium. And, the growing pains of like creating a website that actually functions, having a social media presence, that kind of thing. So I've been doing a lot of that for a number of years now.
Okay. And then you've been part of the Ultimate Adventure and still doing a lot of the magazine stuff as well, correct?
Yeah, so I did a lot more, got back into freelancing, mostly with four-wheel and off-road, some with JP, started doing a lot of that. And then I have been involved with Ultimate Adventure for a really long time. I'm one of two guys. This last year was the 21st calendar year of Ultimate Adventure, but actually the 20th UA. And I'm one of two guys that's been on every single one of them. So.
Wow, who's the other?
A gentleman by the name of Tom Boyd.
I know Tom.
And Tommy's been a part of it for just as long as I have and stuff. So yeah, but yeah, I've been involved with that for quite some time. And then when some magazine shifts happened and Christian Hazel became the editor of Four Wheel and Off Road. Ultimate Adventure is ultimately a Peterson's Four Wheel and Off Road event. So the editor of that book is responsible for it. And so once Rick went to JP, and I guess I should say Fred was the editor of Four Wheel Off Road for a long time, but Fred very wisely allowed Rick to continue managing most of the aspects of Four Wheel. Fred is a very good friend of mine, but Fred's very good at delegating things. But
it's a talent.
Anyway, it is a talent. But I mean, and it's something that Rick really enjoyed doing. But Rick in many ways is the guy that's ultimately responsible for, like, I guess the template of UA, what it is, what it's supposed to be. I mean, that UA would not be what it is without Payway. But he's actually not the one that started it. Believe it or not, that was actually Cole Quinnell, who was a guy I mentioned earlier.
Right.
So anyway, when Christian Hazel became the editor, he and his wife were expecting their fourth child, and I guess he put together the route in 16, but 16 was a kind of a weird deal where it had to come together fairly quickly because of the staff change and all that stuff. But when 17 rolled around, they were expecting their fourth child, and he didn't have time, or he certainly didn't want to be away from the office the amount of time that it takes. So he asked me to do the route planning, and I did such a terrible job that I've been doing it ever since.
Let's talk about Ultimate Adventure. And again, what was the most, out of all those 20 trips, what was the most memorable of those?
That's a tough one. They're all different. And they're all different in many ways. And some of them were better than others. Some of them, and I'm unfortunately, I'm one of the worst, where they all kind of run together, where I don't even, half the time I was like, okay, what year was that? I don't, who was on that trip? And all that stuff. But I would have to say that out of all of them, 2003 was actually my favorite, because it was, for a couple of reasons. One, Rick came out. It was in the Southeast. I lived in Louisiana at the time, and Rick kind of shoulder tapped me, and which is extremely rare for him. He hasn't done much of it since, but he's like, hey, do you want to go help me pre-run UA? And I was like, yes. So we had an adventure for a week. I had a 72 Blazer that hadn't run in months and all that stuff, and I drug it out of the woods and got it running again and all that stuff. And we had this great week-long trip. It was super, super rad. But anyway, so there was that, but I introduced him to Keith Bailey and Sam Gillis and Steve Crawford and a few others. But that trip, we started, I want to say we started in Tellico. That's right. We started in Tellico, and then we ended at the Hot Springs Off-Road Park. And so I kind of had the inside scoop because I had pre-run once with Rick, and then, but I knew that Keith Bailey and Sam and all those were really, really good friends of mine and wheelers. And so when we stopped in Alabama, we got to wheel there, and it was just a great trip from the standpoint of, I got to go four-wheeling with my buddies, and we ended in Hot Springs, and Hot Springs was kind of like my local park at the time. It was only about 3.5 hours from the house. I was pretty involved with the early inception of the Hot Springs Park, which is actually still around.
Yes.
And I had done a lot of work on like marketing and trail building and a bunch of other stuff, because Superlift, it was the Superlift off-road vehicle park at the time.
Right.
And so, anyway, it was just neat from that standpoint. I got to wheel with a bunch of my buddies at these parks that I know. Keith Bailey and the guys from Alabama went out to North Carolina to Tellico just to help as like trail support or whatever. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is that ultimately Keith and Sam both became ultimately cronies for Ultimate Adventure, which are the guys that are basically support staff. They're unpaid, they're volunteers, but they are the guys that basically help herd the cats and keep everybody rolling. They're the guys that pull over if somebody breaks down and help them out and everything. And so that was the start of their UA involvement at the time. And it was just a neat event overall. It was just fun. So that's probably my most memorable.
And you're still working on UA, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So I've done the route planning since 17. So 17 was Arizona and Utah. We started it here at Table Mesa, like 20 minutes from the house, and ended in Cedar City. 18, where did we go? Oh, we went to Maine. And so that was the first eye opener, because my first UA that I did the route planning for, was kind of in my backyard. So it was kind of a mulligan. But the second year was in the Northeast. Like I'd never even been to Maine before in my life, and put that route together. So we started in Maine, ended in Pennsylvania, but we wheeled through Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, and Pennsylvania, I think. And then in 19 was Alaska. That was the 20th calendar UA. And Christian was like, I want to go big. And so I got to spend a whole bunch of time in 2019 bouncing around in Alaska. I did the Alcan 3 times in 2019, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a trip I've always wanted to make.
It's worth doing. I mean, it's long and it's hard. I mean, even the thing about Alaska is even getting there when you're driving is an adventure. I mean, it's 6 hard days from Phoenix. And I was not letting grass grow, but it can take, it takes people 10 days or better to get up there. So, but it's cool. I think I recommend it. I think everybody should do it.
I want to do it in the winter.
Yeah, that would be cool. I actually really wanted to do the Dalton, and it's funny. I went up in May to pre-run, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to have the Dalton as part of the route as well, but I just wanted, I'd watched enough ice road truckers that I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to do it. I wanted the feather in my cap and all that stuff. And so I got up to Fairbanks spent the night, and it had started kind of snowing, sleeting, or whatever. Well, it turned out it did that all night, and I was in a rented JK with stone stock with street tires on it, and got started super early in the morning and could not do over 25. It was so icy and sleety and snowy, and the visibility was terrible. And it took me, I want to say it took 6 hours to get to the Yukon River. And it just seemed like no matter what I did, the moment I tried to pick up the pace, the thing would start fishtailing. And it's 650 miles, I think, from Fairbanks up to Prudhoe. And I got to the Yukon River. It was like, I want to say it was 1 o'clock or something like that. That's not even like a third of the way. And unfortunately I had to turn around and go back, but because I just knew, I mean, at that rate, I was going to get there about the time that I had to turn around and come back down. And the weather wasn't getting any better. So
Right.
super bummed about that. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly doing the Alcan in the wintertime would be totally doable.
Right. Well, I've read a lot about it, for the idea of doing it, and there's a guy that drives. Oh, what does he drive? He drives some little Chevy or something, but it's front wheel drive, and he drives that every winter and goes home for Christmas, and he writes about his trips or has written about his trips, and it was it just amazed me that this is little front wheel drive Chevy car that he has, and he makes that trip every year.
Well, apparently that's the hot setup. Those and Subarus, from what
Right.
I understand. A four-wheel drive like a Cherokee or something like that is not what you want.
Right.
From what I understand, all the locals say that front-wheel drive is where it's at, or a Subaru or something like that. That's why you see them up there all the time.
Huh. Well, that kind of strikes me out then. I'd have to drive the Raptor, which that'd be okay.
It'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's also some road, and actually Harry's done it, Harry Wagner. But there's some road that's part of that. What is that rally that's up there that's in January? But there's some road up there that goes up to the Arctic Circle that's mostly in Canada, I think. But it was some road for a pipeline or whatever, but the road is really not maintained that well anymore.
Okay.
And that sounds really cool to do. The name escapes me right now, but Harry could tell you more about it. But that sounds like something that would be really neat to do as well.
To do the rally.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that too.
Huh. Now you got me thinking. Awesome. Hopefully we got others thinking too.
Have you heard of the Mongolian rally?
No.
Oh, dude, it's these guys in England that put together this thing, and it's like you fly in, you buy some crap box, and it's like I think 1 liter is the limit. You get penalized for anything over 1 liter.
Wow.
And so you buy some crap box, and then you drive it all the way to Mongolia. And the problem is when you get to Mongolia, I guess the laws there are such that you cannot, like, if you buy this crap box, if you stamp it into the country, you have to stamp it out of the country. You cannot sell it. That's not allowed. You can't leave it in a ditch. You can't set it on fire. You have to take it back out. And so, but it sounds just like an epic adventure.
Yeah, it does.
I would love to do that one of these days.
Sounds like a story for a magazine.
Absolutely.
Thinking. There we go. So now you're, I know that I went with Payway and you on the first Dirt and Drive.
Yes.
And that was my first time being able to do an adventure like that. Although a mini adventure, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the Dirt Drive was a cool event, and it's a shame that it's not happening anymore. It went away when the magazine went away, but that was a neat deal, and I think that was kind of Rick's magnum opus in a way, where I liked that one because I was just a crony. I was just one of the support staff, essentially, volunteer, unpaid, and but it was just neat because it was like, here's where we're starting, here's where we're ending. You can follow the route if you want. If you just want to get breakfast and catch up later, that's fine. I really liked the looseness of that, where it was just, you check in and check out on each day, and I guess that's kind of the way the Mongolian rally is set up as well. But anyway, it was that was a neat event, and got to explore some areas of Utah and stuff that I really hadn't been to before. So yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The one thing that I remember about that is, as soon as we hit the centipede line that we had going up the highway from Vegas to Mesquite,
yeah,
and then we went up the pass there, the dirt pass. As soon as we hit dirt, there was no more centipede line. It was like Rick was gone. There was like 5 or 6 people that raced with him and just hauled ass. And all of a sudden I'm looking around like, okay, this is loose.
This is different. This is loose. Yeah.
And
that was the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say I got to the top of that hill, and there was like 5 or 6 people there going, okay, I got this road book, but there's nobody up here. What do we do? I said, you just keep going. And so I kept going, and next thing I know, I had a bunch of followers, and then we stopped to eat, and some people just kept going, and then some new people showed up. Some people came back to us and going, we're lost. We can't read the road book. And it was like, all right, well, hang with us, and we just, it was pretty fun and crazy out there. Just
I mean, that's what I mean. It basically, everybody kind of splintered off into little pockets and stuff. So, and I thought that was kind of cool. You could just kind of do your own pace, and if you wanted to go fast, you could go fast. If you wanted to go slow, you could go slow. So that's what I liked about it. And everybody got there at the end.
Yeah.
So it was
absolutely.
it was all good. But yeah, I think that was the first year, and that was actually the year I had put a motor in my CJ7, and it started it developed a rod knock real bad, like at the end of the first day. And so I didn't know John Leonbauer at the time, and I probably just mutilated his last name. I'm sorry, John. But I didn't know him at the time. He was a freshly minted guy at Diesel Power, and the reason that he was driving the 4-wheeler trailer was he was one of the only guys in the company that had a CDL at the time. So I didn't know him, and I'm like, so I've got this dead Jeep, and what do you think about putting it in the 4-wheeler trailer and skipping on into Moab? And he's like, sure, if there's room or whatever. And we made room. We had to move a bunch of. I think the whole trailer was just full of T-shirt boxes and posters, and there was just all kinds of crap in there. The typical crap for supporting an event. And we made room. We stuffed it in the back of the trailer, and then I called Chris Durham, and he's like, well, I found you a motor in Richfield. And so I don't know John very well at the time at all, and I said, hey, so what do you think about stopping in Richfield and grabbing a motor? And he's like, I'm game. I mean, John, turned out to be a great guy. But we get to this junkyard that it turns out knew Chris very well. Chris, back in his rock crawling days, that was one of his honey holes, I guess, for Dana 60s and stuff like that. Because he never was just rock crawling. He would cherry pick stuff all across the way to build stuff at his shop back in South Carolina. And that was how he made his money at the time. And so anyway, it turns out this was one of his honey holes. And so we get there, and the guy, he's talking about Chris a little bit or whatever. And I said, look, man, you see that trailer out there? I said, it is full of T-shirts and hats and posters and all that stuff. I am scared to death that this motor is going to puke all over, this used motor is going to puke all over all that stuff. I was like, is there any way I could talk you into just making sure you turn it up on end and make sure that all the water and everything, anything possibly in the block runs out? And he's like, not a problem. I got you covered. And so we waited around for probably 20, 30 minutes. Oh, and I asked him, I was like, is there any way I could get you to strap to a pallet so that it just stays upright? And he's like, nope, no, not a problem. And he rolls out one of his guys rolls out about 20 minutes later, with this motor that had been steam cleaned. Every open port on the motor was plugged. The valve the compression numbers were written on the valve cover above each cylinder. I mean, the thing was spotless. You could have eaten off the thing. And so my worries of, ruining a bunch of posters and T-shirts and hats and stuff like that went away.
And then
so then we
go ahead.
Yeah, so then unloaded the whole poop show at Danny Grimes' shop, and then Eric Falar and Durham and I changed the motor that night, and I wheeled in Moab the rest of the week.
I remember that.
Yes, because you were staying at Danny's at the time, I think.
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was fun. So, what is Trent McGee's schedule look like now?
Well, with the magazines going away, that changed things for me quite a bit. I haven't really been doing a whole lot of freelancing. I've been doing some stuff for some industry partners, blog type posts and stuff like that. Still do some press releases, still build a lot of websites, still help, smaller companies get to the next level and stuff. But to kind of fill the magazine void, well, and then I guess I should say, the Ultimate Adventure experience has kind of parlayed into me doing more route planning and trail guide services for other companies. I did a route for Centerforce, kind of like an overland adventure, like an overland style deal, 3-day deal, where I did the route planning and guiding for them, and then I did UAs, of course, and I'm talking to some other people about doing the same thing. I led 3 industry runs this year in Moab and stuff. So apparently I'm okay at trail guiding and route planning and stuff. So that's been good. That's been a lot of fun. That gets me out of here and stuff. But then to kind of fill the magazine void, I've actually been wiring cars, believe it or not.
Really?
I've been doing it on the side for a lot of years. Wiring, for whatever reason, is very easy to me, and it's not heavy or particularly greasy.
So it plays in well, yes.
Yeah, and so I've been wiring cars. So I've got a '69 Camaro here right now that I wired, and I'm putting fuel injection and air conditioning on. I've wired probably 5 or 6 flat fenders and CJ7s and a Mustang, and then I've currently have a '59 International panel van in the shop on a Chevy chassis that I guess is ultimately going to be turned into a food truck. And so
wow,
I'm not doing any of the food truck part of it, but I'm making the lights work and the engine run and all that stuff. So
that's cool.
So I've been doing a little bit more of that. So just keep pivoting,
Yep. Do you, when you're doing your things, are you recording, or not recording, but are you archiving it or whatever you want to call it, photo wise and that kind of thing, or are you just doing it?
Probably not like I should. I have parlayed a couple of the jobs into different, social media or, blog type stuff for other companies and stuff. But no, I should be doing a better job with doing that, but mostly I'm just getting it done.
Okay. So what's the name of your marketing company? Let everybody know what that is in case somebody with a small off-road business goes, I need Trent.
It's McGee Media LLC. So you go on there, you can, there's just a single, honestly, I've been so busy that I haven't put much effort into making my own website. I've been mostly focusing on websites for other people, but yeah, but I do, like I said, a lot of e-commerce stuff and on a variety of different platforms, everything from Magento 2 to WooCommerce to Shopify to BigCommerce and stuff.
Nice.
So
nice.
If anybody needs any help with that, yeah, feel free to get a hold of me.
Excellent. And so what's the future hold? Is there anything that is on your must-do list? I call them life lists. Some people call it bucket lists, but that's so negative. What's
Sure.
on your life list? Besides making that trip to Purdue.
Yeah, the trip to Purdue would be cool. That Mongolian rally, Durham and I have been talking about that. Durham was like,
oh, really?
well, when are we leaving? let's do this.
Durham would be
you
a
know,
good one to have along.
yes, indeed. So I'm pretty sure between he and I, we could make some 1 liter crap box European thing, make it to Mongolia. But I don't know. I would like to do more traveling overseas. I have not really done much of that. I've been to Baja a bunch and raced, and Canada several times and stuff, but I've really never been outside, the North American continent, so to speak, and would really, really like to do more of that. That's, we're not getting any younger, and I
No.
definitely want to make that happen.
Yeah, I did 16, 18 days, I think it was, in Australia, and realized that it was like 6.5 months too short to be in Australia. And I would like to do that, go back for like 6 or 7 months and
I bet.
really see Australia.
Well, and I guess maybe I'm a little bit weird, but I really wouldn't care where, I mean, South America, Europe, even like Russia and stuff like that. I mean, there was an opportunity at one time to go to Dubai, and I was all about that. And everybody, why would you go to the Middle East? I'm like, sign me up. I mean, I'm always up for an adventure.
Right.
So.
We went to Japan, which at least the second language there was English.
I've heard that.
So I was able to get help when everything, if you're in the main tourist areas, all the signs are in, kanji and English. And if you're in the little neighborhoods in Tokyo, there are no English signs. And I'm not real good with Google Translate, or I found that out. So that's why Australia, even though sometimes I would have to go, what? Should I hit Google Translate, try to figure out who I'm talking to? But it was, it was a lot easier.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, for me, I know enough Spanish to get by.
Oh, okay.
Where I could probably make it work in just about any Spanish-speaking country. But yeah, I mean, but Russia, Japan, any, Spain or anything like that. Well, Spain, I guess, is different. But it turns out, I guess, Mexican Spanish and Spain Spanish is very different.
Yes.
But Germany and, all those, I'd be, I don't know. But to me, that's part of the adventure is, and fortunately or unfortunately for us, English is really kind of the international language. So
True.
Sooner or later, you'll find somebody that speaks some English.
Yeah, I stood outside of the largest transit station in Tokyo, Shinjuku Station, and I had to find my hotel, and I'm looking at this big map in this big billboard thing that they got, kiosk-like, that they got on the sidewalk, and there's like 2.5 million people go through this train station, and I mean every type of transportation in Tokyo goes through this one station. And I'm standing out there, and it was Josh England, myself, and Shelly, and we're trying to figure out where our hotel is. We just got off the bullet train and then went to that station because that was where our hotel was supposedly at, and I couldn't find it on the thing. And so I went, English, English. I'm just yelling it out, and Shelly said it was so funny because some guy stopped, looked at me, started to walk away, shook his head, turned around, and came back to help me. And he goes,
"That's awesome."
He goes, "Okay, where is it you need to go?" And I went, "Right here." And I showed him what it said on my phone, and he goes, "Oh, okay." And he showed me on the map where I was at and how many blocks we needed to go. And that way I was at least able to find my way around. But the train system over there was pretty crazy.
That's what I understand. Yeah, my wife and I went to New York a few years ago around Christmas time, and stuff, and like the most efficient way to get around there is on the subway system. And so I got a map at the Port Authority and just sat there and stared at it until it made some kind of sense to me. And believe it or not, there is actually a system there, and once you figure it out, it's really not that intimidating. But doing that in another language, I guess, is a whole different thing. I mean, for me,
we tried to follow the color lines, the dots going down to the right thing, but it was whether we were heading east or west or north and south is where, because so many of the little boroughs or little towns within the whole proper area were so close to being spelled the same or sounding the
Oh,
same that
uh-huh.
we spent one day where we were probably on the train trying to get one place like 5 hours, and it should have taken us like an hour,
Yeah.
because we went completely to the other direction. But that's part of the adventure too.
Yeah, see, I mean, to me, that's the only way to do it. I mean, I am not a cruise guy. I am not a bus tour guy. I think to travel anywhere, you just need to circle a spot on the map and do it and figure out what you want to do. And some of the, I mean, as you know, I mean, some of the best adventures you can ever have come in ways that you could never expect. And I have a cousin that went backpacking around the world with her boyfriend, then now husband, and she, it changed her life, and I very much admire her ability to do that, or that they were able to do that. That's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. We had a mini adventure down to Costa Rica. We flew in, and then we were heading down to Capos to a friend's house, but we didn't have it planned or anything. How we we picked up the rental car and we took off, and then once we got to Capos, every day we just took off. We were staying at their house, but they're working. The kids are at school or whatever, and we're just out in the jungles trying to find
Yeah.
roads, and then finding out that we were completely lost. But we always made our way back, so we weren't really lost.
Yeah.
We were just exploring.
Well, and you never really lost when you're doing stuff like that. It's just whatever adventures are around the next corner. Yeah, I have a friend in Chile, and I would really like to get down there. And it's the guy that Ned Bacon hooked up with, Sebastian Varas, and
Okay.
I would like to make it down there one day because it sounds just absolutely amazing. So to me, it doesn't really matter as long as it's an adventure. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. So, as we wrap this up, is there anything that you can think of that you would like to ask me that you think people might be interested in?
Yeah, I guess. The question I've always wondered is why on or how on earth would promoting events and stuff be something that you'd want to do? Because you're certainly not. I mean, let's face it, you're not in it for the money. You're in for the love of it. So I've
Correct.
always been curious why events, and why have you been doing it for so long?
Well, it came down to my grandfather asking me a question when I was like 11 years old, what I wanted to do in life. And I was in scouts, and I wanted to do something outdoors, fish and game or park ranger or something like that. And he said, well, Rich, just remember that as you get older, find out what it is you love to do in life, and then figure out a way to make a living doing it. And so, and when he explained to me, making a living wasn't how much money you made, but how you got to live your life. So
Sure.
I went through 42 years of life, and then figured out what I wanted to do. I had gone to a couple of the ARCA events early. I was a club president in Cedar City, Utah at the time. And when I made my way back to California, I decided to start Cal Rocks, because I thought, if watching other people put on their events, the what became Pro Rock, what became ARCA, I decided that, I thought I could do it. And I just really love the people. And I love the idea of how the sport, the competition. It's to me, the competition is a chess match between the teams, the terrain, and myself. So kind
Makes
of
sense.
a three-dimensional chess match to see, if I not beat them, because the whole goal is for them, somebody's got to win. So, I mean,
Sure.
but create courses that challenge them, and then that they don't think they can do, or they think, man, this is going to be really difficult. It's getting harder because the vehicles and the drivers and the teams and everything are just so incredible right now. The technology that it's harder to design extremely challenging courses for a broad range of talent. You don't want to destroy the new guys that are coming out and their morale, but you really want to challenge the superior wheeler.
Sure.
And so it's always an interesting game, and just the camaraderie of the sport. It's just something I've always loved to do. So, once I started it, it was like no matter what was happening, I was gonna see it through. So
Gotcha.
That's the whole story.
That's cool. Yeah, I've never done much competitions. I've raced in Baja. I've raced the Mint. I've raced in a couple rock crawling competitions, or a few, I guess I should say. But to me, it's just I think adventure is key. And touching on something else you said, where if you you got to do what you love, and if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's a credo that more people need to decide. I mean, that life is not about things. It's not about the material aspects. The biggest house, the baddest assest, Jeep or whatever. It's about getting out there and exploring. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people get caught up in, is that you don't have to have a $70,000 JK to get out there and do some cool stuff. You just have to get out there. You can be out there in a crap box Cherokee, and actually in a lot of ways that's better, because you get to learn what works and what doesn't. You don't have lockers as a crutch, and you really get to learn the vehicle, and ultimately you become a better driver. And but to me, I think it's just experiences are what it's all about, and not necessarily material gain.
I agree 100%. So, Trent, last thing I'd like to ask, is there anything that you have done or that you want to talk about that we haven't hit on?
Boy, we've covered a lot of ground.
Yes.
No, I mean, I just, like I said, I think the main thing is, again, anybody that's listening that, wants, like the kind of thing, I'll go to events. I'll go to Tierra del Sol or Moab or something like that, and I'll meet guys, and they'll be like, well, I'd like to apply. They usually know me from UA or something or something else or whatever, and it's like, how do you do that? Or I'd sure like to do that one day. And it's like, you know what? Do it. And specific to UA, for example, we get less applications than you'd think, and and you really don't. It's not about having the biggest, best car. I mean, it's specific to UA again. Something unusual gets you to the front of the line. If you're in a JK or a JL, you can kind of hang it up. But if you're in a square body Chevy or a Denside Ford or a Scout or whatever,
something a little more unique.
Something a little bit more unique. Well, because for UA, for example, it's think about it from the reader's perspective. Would you want 20 JKs in a line, or would you want 20 really diverse vehicles that you can see what works well in one area, what doesn't in another, and stuff. And really, to me that's what's so awesome about doing the route planning for UA, is that this line might be great for a JK, but there's no or a TJ or something like that, but there's no way we're going to stuff a square body or a full size Dodge in it. It's not going to happen, and stuff. So building routes that challenge a variety of people in a variety of vehicles in a variety of different skill levels and stuff is one of the most challenging and probably one of the most rewarding aspects of doing the route planning, much like you do when you're doing your courses and stuff.
Right. Exactly. Well, cool. Trent, I want to say thank you for coming on and sharing over an hour and a half of your life with us. And, I think that anybody out there that wants to follow in the footsteps of people in the off-road industry, media is hard to get into now, but social media gets you there. There's a lot of businesses that need media people or people to help them tell their story. So for those that like telling a story, it's still available out there. It's just in a different format. And then there are a few small niche magazines and still the bigger magazines. They've just consolidated. So, get out there and do what you want to do. And Trent, thank you for explaining all that to us.
No, agreed. And I think, it's an interesting time right now because with the anchor books going away, there's an enormous void there. And I think it's something that Harry Wagner touched on as well, is that, there's a lot of talent out there. And there's still a thirst for knowledge. And I don't know what's going to fill that void. Something is going to fill that void. It's not social media. I don't think that's it. So, but a good authoritative source for information that's vetted, that's quality people. Some of the niche books like yours, I think are a great avenue for that. But I'm just wondering what that's going to hold, or what that's going to look like and what that's going to be. And I think I'll be very interested to see what that ends up being.
Myself as well. We're still trying to grow ours. So anyway, thank you for sharing your life and coming on board, and may there be many more wheeling days in your future.
Indeed. Well, I hope so. And thank you so much for having me, Rich. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Thanks.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.